Welcome to Creating Community, How to Grow a Neurodiversity Network. My name is Ellie. I'm part of the PR and communications team here at Sumo, and I'm chuffed to bits today to be joined by people from Lab 42 and Sumo Nottingham as they talk about doing just that, creating community within their studios through the growing of their neurodiversity network. So with that, let's jump over and meet our panelists. Let's go for Lab 42 first.
Hi, my name is Cindy Archer. I'm the Office Administrator and Neurodiversity Champion at Lab 42 Games, and I have ADHD.
Liam, over to you.
Yeah, right. I'm Liam. I'm a programmer at Lab 42, and I've been, diagnosed with OCD about 10 years ago, and then diagnosed with ADHD at the end of last year. And I've been part of Lab's neurodiversity network from pretty much the beginning. So yeah, that's me.
Super, thank you very much. And then I'm going to go up the road to Sumo Nottingham. Karen, I'll start with you.
Hi everybody, my name is Karen. I'm the Studio Engagement Manager. I'm neurotypical. I have a husband who's ADHD and a son who is ASD. I'm the Neurodiversity Champion for Nottingham, working alongside Matt.
Super. And then last but not least, Matt, take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt. So I'm a senior producer at Sumo Nottingham. Some of you might know me from Sheffield as well. I have ADHD and autism.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. So before we jump into the story of the Neurodiversity Network, there might be some people watching this who maybe identify as neurodivergent, know somebody that does, or maybe you're neuro-curious, as Cindy likes to say, or maybe you have no idea about any of that and want us to explain it. So I'm going to hand to our panelists first to kind of talk a little bit about what we mean when we talk about neurodiversity and some of the terms that you're going to hear in today's talk. So Matt, I'm going to hand to you. What do we mean when we say neurodiversity?
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. So neurodiversity kind of speaks to everyone's brains really, and what everyone experiences in everyone's different types of brains. Neurodivergence specifically is where that diverges away from the typical type of brain, and generally covers folks like us, so folks with autism and ADHD, OCD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, that kind of thing. There's lots of different advantages and disadvantages to having kind of a spicy brain. It just means we generally need a little bit of extra support at work, and the communities like the ones we've talked about today creating really help us with that. We noticed that in the Sumo census that we've done recently, around about 30% of the Sumo kind of workforce identify as potentially being neurodivergent or think that they might be. So it's a really important thing for us to support as a company.
Super, thanks. Liam, anything to add?
Matt pretty much covered it perfectly. Neurodiversity generally refers to we're all individuals and our brains will work in our own way. But yeah, being neurodivergent is kind of where the way your brain works has diverged enough from what's considered the norm. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's talk about the Neurodiversity Network. So it started life at Lab 42, and I'm going to hand to Cindy to kind of tell us that story, where it came from, where it is now, and how it began. Cindy, go for it.
Thanks, Ellie. Well, I think it started just through conversations around the studio. We're a very open, quite a small studio. There's I think it was 74 people, about 50 in at any given time. We're on rotation, so people really know each other, and people do have conversations about things. I'm very open about my ADHD, so this has sparked different conversations from different people about sort of being neuro-curious, which you mentioned. So it started with a lot of people being neuro-curious, really. We did a survey just to see who's already diagnosed, who already identifies as but isn't diagnosed, who thinks they might be. And there was a lot of people. So we thought that it would be a really good idea to create a kind of support group, information sharing group, resource sharing group. And that's how the Neurodiversity Network started. And so we meet once a month and discuss all things neurodiversity, and are helping people through diagnostic processes, help with things at work. So it's been going really well, I think.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And Matt, it was kind of you that looked at bringing this up to Sumo Nottingham. How did NOTS get involved? Where did that begin?
Yeah, I would take all the credit. It was a lovely collaboration with Karen as well. But we kind of it came about organically, really. I got diagnosed with ADHD last year, and working with Karen, we realised there was some other folks in the studio that could have benefited from chatting about that diagnosis experience and supporting some of our people. That kind of snowballed into us thinking about wanting to train up our managers, and we realised that Cindy and the folks down at Lab had done a similar thing where they'd done a training course with a lady called Alice from SIC. So I went down to have a chat with Cindy down at Lab 42 to see what they'd all been doing and learn about the network and things like the survey that Cindy mentioned. And we kind of brought that back up to Nottingham, and me and Karen had a bit of a chat about, like, why don't we make our own community here in Nottingham? You know, we have a similar workforce who identifies as neurodivergent, similar sort of levels as Lab 42 had, and it made sense for us to be able to support people and have that community in place. We've been doing it for about 6 months now, Karen, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. And obviously within Sumo we have kind of resources that are available to people, but Karen, why is it important that studios are providing that more localized support?
We do. Obviously, we have Prism who do an amazing job, but we just felt that it would be great to have something actually on site that people could gather together, talk about. I mean, going back to what Matt was saying, there was also Hannah Corcoran's talk at SDC last year, which really started it for me. So looking at that, we were like, yeah, we should definitely do something local. And I think once we'd started talking in the studio locally about it, people were really open to coming and talking about neurodivergent and you know, it went from there. It's been great.
Yeah, amazing. So Cindy, you kind of touched on it earlier, but what happens at a meeting of the Neurodiversity Network? How often are these meetings and what conversations are being had?
Well, we have a sort of an official meeting once a month. We do have a Teams channel, so people will pop in interesting articles they found out or little resource or experiences with different resources. We get together for lunch once a month. We have sort of a loose theme, what we're going to talk about. Things like, for example, when the benefit window opened, like how could we make this more understandable for people, how to sort of access things like Bupa, which are just like forms and other stuff. So people, you know, if you like get it broken down into bits, so things like that. Or if somebody's interested in finding out a bit more about diagnosis, for example, or we had someone come in and speak to us who is an adult recently diagnosed with ADHD, who is raising 3 different neurodivergences in her children. And she works with neurodivergent children, and just listening to her talk about her experience, not only as a person with ADHD, but also as a support worker with that kind of thing. So we just sort of pick a subject and talk about it, but mostly we just sort of talk about our experiences, what resources we find helpful, and things like that. So it's basically a support group with sandwiches once a month, but we're open on the channel all the time, and we just have those conversations around the studio all the time. So yeah.
Nice. And Karen, is that experience kind of reflected at Sumo Knots? I know you love cake up in Sumo Nottingham, so there's definitely cake, right?
Of course there's cake involved. Yeah, very, very similar. I wouldn't say we have a regular once a month. We tend to just pop our meetings in, working around projects at the moment, which is very, very busy. But yeah, we have our meetings. We celebrated Neurodiversity Celebration Week back in March. We were showing some of the talks. And like Cindy says, it's just a chance for people to get together. We find that every time that we'll do a message around the studio about it, we'll have another couple of people that kind of go, well, I'm quite interested in that. I'd like to come and join you. So it's just about raising awareness all the time. And it's really nice to see people that have joined that maybe haven't got formally diagnosed, but have been thinking about it, feel more able to talk about it and have gone forward for diagnosis. So yeah, it's definitely very similar to Cindy, and cake is always involved.
Of course. So I guess a question, Matt and Liam, I'm going to ask you this one, but what changes are kind of happening within the studio, or what conversations have you noticed have been happening as a result of kind of the Neurodiversity Network forming?
Certainly in Nottingham, one of the biggest obvious changes we've done is we've put fidget toys in all of our meeting rooms now, which sounds like a really simple thing to do. You just go on Amazon, buy some fidget toys, but it's part of what we just said a second ago about making this more of an open thing. It's not something that only the diverse people are allowed to use. We're in meetings now and everybody can pick them up and have a go with them, and it doesn't distract. And we've done other things, like we have every Thursday, Karen, we do like food rotation, don't we, of like savouries and sweets. And we've had some feedback from the community that they don't like everybody touching everybody's food, so we've bought little tongs and stuff like that. So all little things, but they're things that really make a difference. We've made some quiet zones in the area, in the office as well, so when people are working in the studio, if they get bothered by too much noise and people walking around, there's like a quiet area that they can use. And we're just adapting as much as we can, learning as much as we can as a group, and kind of seeing what we can introduce.
Yeah, Liam, is there anything over at Lab 42 that you think has been changing as a result?
So even before the network came about, I feel like Lab was already quite open and accommodating towards people's differences. So I feel like we've just kept on doing what we've already been doing, and I feel like now people have more of an avenue to talk about their neurodivergences with. People are just more willing to ask for specific support, like say these noise cancelling headphones. Lab bought me these so I can block everyone out a bit more effectively in the office. Yeah, I think that's generally it, really. Like, there hasn't been any huge change. We've just been keeping on doing what we've already been doing.
Yeah, and as Matt said, all those small changes really do make a big difference, and having them available to everyone means that people who maybe do identify as neurodivergent aren't having to out themselves to seek that support, because it's just widely available. I think it's awesome. So Matt and Liam, I'm going to stick with you if that's all right. Obviously, you shared at the beginning kind of your own personal experience with being neurodivergent, and I wondered if you could share a little bit about your personal journey of having access to the network and how that's kind of impacted on your journey of seeking diagnosis. And yeah, Matt, do you want to go first?
I can do, yeah. So yeah, I mentioned I got diagnosed with ADHD last year, not long after I joined CMO Nottingham, funnily enough. But from that experience and from talking with some fantastic folks at the studio like Karen, we discovered there was more of us, and that chance of learning more of us was actually meeting more different types of people with different types of neurodivergence. And that was, people who had ASD, people who had OCD, a lot of people who had dyspraxia and dyslexia issues and things like that. So it was really good just to mix and understand, because the one thing that you'll find with neurodiversity is a lot of what they call comorbidities, where you kind of have multiple problems, so to speak. That's why we call our brains spicy. They're not just one thing. And the big part of that for me was realizing, I'd kind of had understandings that I might be autistic for a long time anyway, but being in that group with other people who are autistic and have been diagnosed autistic a long time, or people who are newly realized, it really helped my confidence to get my diagnosis sorted out, because I'd helped people with my ADHD diagnosis to get themselves diagnosed, and people then helped me with my ASD diagnosis and getting that sorted out, and I got that sorted out last month. And it's been a really nice way of mixing and understanding the different types of elements that make up the spectrum of neurodiversity, and it's been a lovely group and very supportive.
Yeah, I love that. Liam, anything to add?
Yeah, so it was not long before the network came together that I started chatting to Cindy about thinking I might have ADHD, and looking at getting on the diagnostic pathway. And Cindy suggested I check out the NHS Right to Choose pathway, because that's a way of accessing private services for diagnosis, but the NHS pay for it. And the waiting list is a lot shorter for stuff like that. So yeah, it was chatting to Cindy before the network even existed, kind of got me on track with getting diagnosed. And then when the network began, I started attending and just learning like how can you get diagnosed, and sharing my experiences so I can help other people who think they might have ADHD get on that pathway themselves. And since my diagnosis, I've been someone people come to and ask, like, right, how did you get diagnosed? How can I do it? So yeah, it's helped me in getting diagnosed. And since diagnosis, I've been able to help others who are in the same position as me this time last year.
Yeah. Karen, I'm going to throw a wildcard question at you. You mentioned at the beginning that you've got family who are neurodivergent, and I just wonder how kind of being part of the neurodiversity network has kind of, maybe it's helped you being neurotypical kind of understand them a little bit more and understand the support that they need.
Massively, absolutely, massively, it really has. So my husband got diagnosed at 52 with ADHD, so it just shows you it's never too late. I mean, it was no surprise at all, but the more that I worked with the neurodivergent community and looked at this as part of the SUMO Nottingham offering, the more it's helped me to understand. And also with my son who has ASD, it's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I can help them, I can understand them, I can understand people at work. So it's just been a win-win all round, really. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's just the positivity around it all that we've got this awareness that was not there, before, when my husband would talk about being at school and the experiences that he had. I just think it's a massively positive step forward.
Yeah, lots of people nodding when you talked about school. I think we can all relate to that. Absolutely.
Yeah, labels as the naughty child at school that wouldn't sit still, that would, I think now that he's able to, and I'm sure that Liam and Cindy and Matt will now they are able to understand how their brain works. It kind of goes, oh yeah, well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it's hugely positive.
Yeah, definitely. And Cindy, how does it kind of feel as being the person who started all this to see more of these conversations coming through? What's that experience like for you? Obviously, you said you're really open with your ADHD. So just wondering how it kind of feels for you.
Well, I think it was inevitable. I really do. So I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm a massive pioneer in any way, but I think, and this is sort of just my opinion, that during the big C a while ago, a lot of people really had enough time to think about how they are, or if they didn't feel quite right, why is that? And then there's all these different podcasts and blogs and everything, and so a lot of people started to really think about, well, maybe this is something that I relate to. This, I can relate to this. So it feels like there's like a very big sort of worldwide movement of understanding about neurodiversity, like neurodiversity as in we are all part of this neurodiverse, like a biodiverse world, and understanding how people can be accommodated in that world if they don't fit into those rigid ways of being educated, or what kind of processes people are kind of forced into at work that don't make sense to them, and all of that. So I guess to answer that question in a roundabout way, I think it's inevitable. I think it's inevitable that people are going to start looking at it differently. People are going to start looking at how flexible their workplaces are. And not have those, or understand why somebody may be failing in one area without looking at where it's called like spiky profiles. So a lot of neurodivergent people have what are known as spiky profiles. So really, really amazing up here, but really, really down here. So most neurotypical people, their sort of skill sets and they're kind of here, and neurodivergent people. So it's understanding that someone, just because they are useless at this, doesn't mean, So yeah, and answer that question, I think it was inevitable. It feels really good that it's actually happening, and I think like all of our studios could really, really benefit from it. I know we've got Prism, which is great. It's super that, great place, great resource for finding out things, but having that sort of local, real face-to-face conversation stuff is really, really good. So yeah, I think it's just the world is opening up. So this kind of thing is going to spread everywhere, I hope.
So that's where the Neurodiversity Network has been. But what's next? I think Knox, I'll probably start with you on this. What's next what does the future hold for the Neurodiversity Network?
Well, we definitely continue to look. We are learning together. We're definitely learning this all together. So we continue to grow. We continue to listen to our teams. We continue to try and make adaptations where we can and keep up with what's going on currently. So it's really difficult to say what's next. You know, we just keep going and keep raising awareness.
Yeah, we're on a
More,
journey.
isn't
I
it?
don't know whether we are on a journey. Absolutely, Matt.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that.
No, I kind of wrote more on my notes. It's kind of like we feel like we're just getting started, Karen, don't we? You know,
Yeah.
Cindy and
Yeah.
Liam have got a few years on us, or at least a couple of years,
They
a bit
have. I
longer
have
on
to
us,
say,
so we've got some catching up to do. So
Cindy is the person that we hold ourselves towards
God.
because she's
Definitely.
the hero.
No pressure.
So with
But yeah,
with the hero mind then, Cindy, what do you kind of think? What's on the horizon for the Neurodiversity Network at Lab?
Well, it's kind of what I said before. I think it's just it becomes embedded everywhere. So I mean, we are a support. I'd say a support group loosely, because we are, you know, like-minded people that have an adversity, which is or isn't, that we talk to each other about. But hopefully the future will be that people are just, you know, allowed to be whoever they are. It's almost like it's kind of, the future should be that we don't need this in a way, you know what I mean? But I think going forward is just being getting more educated, spreading that education to maybe our neurotypical line managers, so that people who may not even have been diagnosed or identify as, maybe someone can recognize, oh, okay, so, you know, and they can manage someone in that way without having to, you know, put a label on anyone or anything like that. So yeah, I think the future is just more understanding, more education, more people knowing all about it. So it's just second nature, and dealing with people as a person-centric approach.
Yeah, and so if there's somebody watching this who maybe would like to implement this into their studio, what kind of advice would you give them to get it started? Karen, I'm going to start with you if that's all right.
Don't even think about it. Do it today. It adds
Yesterday.
so much. Go back immediately to your desk and send an email. It adds so much value, and people will be really open to it. So I would absolutely go for it.
Yeah, great. Cindy, anything to add?
Same as Karen. I mean, I've spoken to a couple of folk at different studios who are like definitely interested in starting. It's just educate yourself. Well, have a neurodiversity champion, educate yourself as that champion to the best of your ability, spread that information and be consistent. So be there and be consistent, and away you go. You'll have it.
Amazing. And then on the flip of that, if there's someone watching this who thinks that they would really benefit from this within their studio, what advice would you give them to kind of get that conversation started? Liam, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so first thing I'd say is definitely reach out to any of us. If you have any questions about like, how could you help get one started in your studio? Or if you don't believe that's possible, how could you benefit from one at another sumo studio? Because even though we're very local support groups, I can't imagine we'd ever bar people because they're not part of the same exact company. So yeah, just reach out, talk to any of us, and just see if we can help you figure out what might work best for your studio or for you as an individual.
Yeah, nice. And Matt, what advice would you give to kind of get that conversation going?
Definitely say, yeah, do it. Like Liam said, get involved. If you are willing to be open and drive a change in your studio, you will be met with open arms, as Karen and Cindy have said. You know, that this is something that SEMO definitely needs to support. Like I said at the top of the call, you know, 30% of our workforce, you know, identifies in this group. So there's lots of people who need this sort of thing and will benefit from it. And you know, the thing I think me and Liam have both found is that being open about your neurodiversity means that other people will come to you, and you'll find wonderful people like Karen and Cindy who are more than willing to support that and turn that into a community. And it doesn't have to be a big scary thing. It can just be a one-on-one coffee sometimes until that becomes a bigger thing. It can be a Teams chat. You know, you can start small and build from there. And it's a great thing to do, and definitely supportive for both yourself to learn about yourself more, but also to help others.
Thank you very much. And that's all the time that we have today. And I think the key points just to take away is that, you know, when you foster better engagement with your neurodivergent colleagues, it gets the best out of everyone. That quote from Schitt's Creek that says, when one of us shines, we all shine. You can support better mental well-being amongst neurodivergent team members in your studio by creating a space for them to access that support. I think important thing that Cindy mentioned is to kind of stay educated, for everyone to stay as up to date. We're going to include some resources at the end of this talk that you can access, that's for anyone at any level of understanding, to kind of get up to speed and find out what's happening. And keep talking. I think that's the main thing that we can take away from this. Keep talking, because good things can come from those conversations. And then we're questions. So if anyone's got one for us, pop it in the chat, and we'll come to it. And if you don't want to ask it in a public forum, come find any of these lovely folks. Find them on Teams. They will answer any questions that you've got. They can kind of help get those conversations started. And yeah, that's us. Thank you so much to my panelists for sharing your words and wisdom, and for everyone watching. Keep doing good things. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ellie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Q&A. Before we dive into the questions, which we've already had some really great ones through, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody in the chat. We've been keeping an eye on it for the last half hour, and people have been so kind and generous with their stories and their experiences, and we see you and we thank you for your honesty and openness. And I also want to say a huge thank you to our amazing panelists for being just so brilliant and so insightful in the session. So with that, let's jump into some questions. So we've had one through in the chat already, which comes from Georgina, and it says, as a neurodiverse person, is there anything that your manager does that really helps you, or is there advice that you would give to people managers about how to best support someone who is neurodiverse in their team? Who would like to take this? Matt, you've unmuted.
Yeah, I can take this one. The best thing to do, I find, is to be honest. So talk to your lead, your manager, your peers around you, and tell them what it is that you need and the support you would like. In our studio, we did some training with all of our leads and managers so that they better understand neurodiversity and how to support people with it. I'll often catch my manager out if he says something that triggers neurodiverse, the whole meeting saying catch up ? Those kind of things, like being careful of not doing that, and making sure that if a meeting has an agenda, that you generally try and stick with it and you don't surprise the person with something completely different that can send them off on a spiral. But yeah, generally honesty, openness, transparency between you and your manager, and it helps them immensely.
Great answer. Thank you, Matt. We've noticed that diagnosis was coming up a lot in the chat. It was a big topic of conversation. And I think something that the panelists here are quite keen to discuss is kind of looking at that diagnosis journey and what it looks like. Now, Cindy, for anyone who is looking to make a start on that journey, what does a first step look like? What's some advice that you would give someone right at the start?
Well, first step is you need to talk to your GP, but even before you do that, there are a couple of, like what Liam went through, there are a couple of private assessment organisations that you can assess through Right to Choose, which is an NHS service where you can choose your own mental health provider. So I would say I've put some stuff up in Dojo, and I think that if each studio had a little resource of this, but if most of these resources, these assessment resources, will have a pathway on their website, and they will have the forms you need to fill in. So just basically make sure that your quiver is full before you go to your GP. My GP didn't even know this existed, and I had to educate them myself, even though Liam has the same GP and he went through this. So you just need to have all your ducks in a row. So I would fill in the forms. There's an assessment form where it sort of measures how ADHD you are, how ASD you are. A covering letter that sort of explains why you feel this might be you, with examples from throughout your life. Like when I was a child, I found it very difficult to concentrate in school. I was often and they will send that all off. You will get a message from whichever that provider is. For Liam, it was ADHD 360. I'm going through Psychiatry UK. And they will keep you updated on what that waiting list looks like. Now, for ADHD 60, it's about 6 months, which is about 5 years and 6 months shorter than the NHS waiting list. But yeah, I think we will be putting a lot more resources up on Dojo. We have a neurodiversity network section in our Lab 42 Dojo page, so I'm going to be making sure to update those pathways. But yeah, there are ways around it. You don't have to go private. The downside with going private, of course, is that you will not be recognised by the NHS for prescriptions. So you would have to buy private prescriptions. So it's almost like is it worth waiting for 6 months to a year and not paying for that service? But anyway, we will be spreading that good news around for people in our section in Dojo, I think.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Just to add to that as well, there's if you're the kind of person who finds all that stuff overwhelming, as probably most of us are, obviously you can work with the people in our HR team, but there's also a really good resource called Send It to Alex, which we've worked with a lady called Alice at SIC who does a lot of our neurodiversity training. There's a kind of a company that they are affiliated with called Send It to Alex, and they're kind of like an ADHD butler, for want of a better word. So anything that you're struggling with or can't face doing, you can talk to them and they will do it for a fee, but it's not a very big fee. And you can get support on that through things like access to work and stuff. So worth a look as well.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you very much. We've had some amazing questions come through. A really great one that's come through is, do you have any tips on how to be a supportive partner to somebody who is neurodivergent? I don't know if anybody is comfortable answering this or would like to.
I'm a crap partner, so that's no point asking me.
I can see Lab 42 team just pointing at each other.
Well, I'm a single lady, but I think that as a neurodivergent person who has been in failed relationships, I think it's honesty and understanding. I mean, that should be the cornerstone for any relationship, really. But it's gonna, if you're annoyed by someone who's not going to be on time and your partner has some executive dysfunction in that area, you probably shouldn't be with a person with ADHD. I know what I'm saying here.
This is now a dating hotline.
It's just honesty and understanding. I think it's like, all relationships should be based on understanding, compromise, compromising some of our little foibles and annoyances that can let go, but it's just same thing. And I think if Karen said something in the talk there about how just being educated through this network has helped her a lot with understanding her hubby. So yeah, I think it's just understanding, education, and kindness and compassion, please. Definitely. Everyone.
Definitely. The person that asked that also said, I imagine the tips can also be transferable to a colleague, and I think we can all agree with that. It's more understanding, try and keep educated, and ask questions. I think don't be afraid to offend. I think it's a good idea to ask a question rather than just kind of be cagey and go around it. So yeah, thank you for your question, and thank you everyone. Another question that's come through is, and Liam, this one's for you, is what is the process like about kind of telling people about that diagnosis when you've got it, coming to work and speaking to your colleagues? What's that process kind of like, or what was it like for you?
So personally, it wasn't too bad because at lab, we've got quite a good open accepting atmosphere anyway. So I guess, yeah, I'd just be honest with people, just say right, I've got my diagnosis. Trying to think of how else to word it. Yeah, I just told people, educated people, because there might be people who already kind of know because they've been with me through the process. There might be people who don't know, so I'll just inform them, and if they've got any questions, answer them, and just let people know, okay, I know what's up with me now, and here's how I'd like to be treated, or here's some adjustments I'd like. So stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Matt, do you have anything to add?
The thing I'd add is remembering that it's a journey. This diagnosis is the first step on this road. Someone says, well done, you're autistic, you're ADHD. Doesn't mean you suddenly get this download from the sky of what it means to be this thing. You don't. You spent half of your life wondering what's going on and why you feel different. So when you tell people at work, if they say, cool, what support do you want? I don't know about you, Liam, but I didn't bloody know. I was I don't know. Let me have a think about it. And I'm still thinking about it. And I was diagnosed over a year and a half ago. So I think it's not one that you should be expected to know the answers to straight away. But certainly things like the training we've done and the support, and there's so many good books and podcasts and things that you can learn this stuff from. And talking to others in the support groups that we've talked about today, you know, there's other people with lived experience that maybe have been diagnosed longer than you, or, you know, just had a different diagnosis from something else, and yeah, it helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you both. A question for you now, Cindy, is what do you think the best way is for the workload to be shared? Obviously, we've all got day jobs, but people who are working to support the group or working to support others, do you have any insight on kind of the best way to kind of split that workload and find capacity for those people?
Workload how? Workload as in studio workload?
So like balancing their kind of day job with balancing their work as kind of a neurodiversity support within the group, if that makes sense.
Well, we don't really, it hasn't come to that so much. Like we're not prism size, so we don't really need that kind of administrative support. And for me, it isn't really that. I've just integrated it into what I do around here as like part of being like sort of facilitator of people's needs around here, and a mental health first aider and all of this stuff, and just wanting people to be happy and comfortable. So it isn't really all that much work at the minute. I mean, you'd have to, if it ever got like behemothly huge and it was like at a really, really big studio, I mean, that's something obviously you'd have to look into as part of someone's role, maybe, but it's not that much work. I think I should stress that it's really easy to do. It doesn't take any time out of anything, really. We have like, you know, one lunchtime a month where people join or don't join. So I would say there is no managing of workload for me anyway. I don't know if Matt's experience is the same. I know that you've got a few more things going on over in Nottingham, but
couple of bits, yeah. Me and Karen did most of the work to start with, so we would arrange the meetings, we would come up with the topic, and then we would take minutes and stuff. Recently we brought on Natalie, who was one of our studio admins. It's fantastic, and she handles the day-to-day, so she will book the meetings. She keeps an eye on the Teams chat just to make sure that we're all spotting questions when they come in, and then yeah, if there's any food or anything like that to order, then she generally sorts that out. But other than that, yeah, it's very, very low maintenance. Like you might have a conversation 10-15 minutes with somebody in the group every now and again, but it's about just being there for people. And if you can't find time to be there for people, then what are you doing in life?
Yeah. And it goes a little bit back to that open and honesty, like we were talking about, and making sure that those communication lines are opened for people to go, look, I don't have the capacity for this right now, whether that's workload or just personally, you know, my batteries are empty, I don't have capacity, and making sure those communication lines are open to other people in the studio to go, I can't do this now, but I can support here, or here's ways that I can support. So yeah, I think that communication is super important. So yeah. Thank you. Another one that's come in, and Matt and Liam, I think this is probably one for you. For someone not in a management position, how can we be more inclusive of our neurodiverse colleagues and peers?
Question. Tricky, that one. I think it's same stuff really. It's being understanding, and you know, I have a lot of colleagues at my level. I'm a senior, so there's a lot of seniors in the studio and below that will know that I'm in the network and know that I'm out as ADHD and autism, so they will speak to you. I tend to find as well that once you've been diagnosed, you kind of have a spidey sense of other people who are in your kind of wheelhouse, and if they're struggling in a meeting, or if they've had a particularly tough time, or you know, you can tell that they're not doing too good, you can kind of go, oh, maybe it's because of that. You wouldn't go up to them and say, oh, are you autistic? Are you now? Tell me now. But you can kind of sense things and, you know, have a conversation with those people and make sure that they've got the support that they could do with. But hopefully the policies we put in place, I don't know if they're the same for you, Cindy and Liam, but they're studio wide. We haven't gone, these are just for the special kids, you know, these are for everybody. So, you know, anybody, for example, in our rooms can use all of our, you know, stimming things, and anybody can raise a question to the network. It's not like hidden behind a little closed door or anything. So yeah, if that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what, Matt? Absolutely. I mean, we, you know, as a studio culture, I think if you strive to have a culture in your studio, and nurture that culture and sort of insist on that culture of sort of kindness, compassion, understanding, empathy, and all of that kind of stuff, then it just be second nature to be kind to people. And understand that people are different, people behave differently. Some people may not react to the same things same way you do, and that doesn't mean they are wrong or unlikable. But yeah, absolutely, I think it just all boils down to studio culture. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, agreed. Liam, do you have anything to add?
I think they pretty much covered it, really. Yeah, just like advocate for your co-workers. So if you see them struggling with something or don't feel like they're getting a fair chance, like reach out your hand, give them some help, talk to their managers maybe, and yeah, just be open. Don't push your expectations on other people. So like, say if you're really productive, things that work for you might not work for them. Because I've experienced that a lot. People just saying like, why don't you just do this, Liam? And it's like, because my brain works fundamentally differently to you. So yeah, advocate, just be open, like, just listen, be nice to each other.
Yeah, do good things and be kind. Amazing. A question for Matt, and this is one that came up a lot in the kind of chat, and it's a big question, but do you need a diagnosis to be able to access support?
No, you do not. So I battled with this for quite a long time. I suspected I had it, and there's possibly people in this talk who've worked with me before who were like, bloody hard, did it take him that long to realise? But it did. And really, for the longest time, yeah, it's your decision, really. As we've all said, the waiting list for these things are quite long. But just because you're on a waiting list doesn't necessarily mean you have to wait until the end of that waiting list to decide that that's what you are. You know yourself better than anybody. Certainly within Sumo, HR can be absolutely brilliant. I reached out to Tom Roberts when I first got my diagnosis, and I wanted to get diagnosed with dyslexia as well, which wasn't something I was going to do through Bupa. But there's the Unum system that we have, Help at Hand. You can use that to get support for anything. I got mine for dyslexia, but you can get it for all sorts of things, whether it's just a general anxiety or an actual, full neurodivergent condition. And then on the other side of things, for access to work or right to work, I can't remember which way you pronounce it, but the government thing, you can do that anytime, as many times as you want, actually, without having a diagnosis either. I did mine as I was going through my ADHD diagnosis, and it's been really good. I've been given access to an ADHD coach paid for by the government. Had like 13 sessions approved, which has been fantastic. And that person can coach you on anything to do with, managing your day and getting things done, to focus, to strategies around difficult relationships you might have within work. And all that you didn't need a diagnosis for. It entirely depends on how you feel about labels and if you want the label and if you don't want the label. It's a big thing in the community about whether people want it or not. I personally wanted it. I don't know about you, Liam and Cindy, but it was important to me to know that I had the label because I'm a completionist. I wanted to get the little tick box, but yeah, there's a fair few people in our community who aren't diagnosed but are quite happy to say that they are, and and self kind of realise that, and that's absolutely fine. And I think as a community we just need to be very mindful of treating those people with as much respect as we would if someone who's got a full diagnosis, because it's no less legitimate. You know your own brain better than anybody will.
Oh, I love that. Thank you very much, Matt. Well, that feels like quite a good place to end. We have no more questions, so I think let's call this one. But thank you very much to everyone for watching, to our amazing panelists, to everyone working backstage to get this running so smoothly. We love you. And to everyone in the chat for just being so open and honest and sharing your stories with us. If you do have any more questions, I can see there's been another in the Q&A that I think actually Karen will probably be best to answer, so I'll pass those on. But if you've got any more, feel free to reach out to these lovely people. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help. So yeah, that's our session. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you soon and have an amazing day. Thanks, everyone.